This morning I want to talk about happiness and how one can discover happiness within your own life. Now, before I begin, I do want to give a definition about what I mean by the word happiness. And for me, it's a state of inner harmony. It's a state of wholeness and contentment and exuberance and wonderment and absorption. But above all else, I would say that happiness is a feeling that there's nothing in our fundamental being that's flawed or missing. Everything you ever needed is right here, right now. And you don't realize that abstractly. You feel it deep within your bones. Now, I think there's two typical approaches to discovering happiness, and I kind of want to look at them a little bit and see which one is the more viable approach to discovering happiness. And the first one is searching for happiness by looking for something outside of yourself. This is usually done by acquiring better accommodations, better house, better clothes, boats, jet skis, swimming pools, an RV, all of these status symbols that we've been told will make us happy when we acquire them. So it's things that we're looking for in our environment to fill the void. And the second way is developing your mind, which ends up yielding something that I would refer to as inner happiness, where you look inwardly and discover happiness there. So I want to start with the first one, searching for happiness by looking for things outside of yourself. There once was a sailor who ended up saying, "When I end up reaching the horizon, I will be happy." When I get to that point, then I'll be content. Then everything ends up coming together. Then I end up experiencing a certain sense of inner harmony. When I reach the horizon, when I reach some distant goal, when I end up acquiring the thing that I desire, then I'll be happy. So that's the first approach, and I think it's a very feeble approach to discovering happiness. To try to satisfy your desires by purchasing things is like trying to put out a fire with oily rags. It only makes it worse. The stuff that you crave, for example, let's just say that when you were growing up, you ended up getting the idea that what you need in life is the 2-car garage and the white picket fence and the 2 different vehicles and the boat and the jet ski and the 4-wheeler and the nice piece of land and other wonderful accommodations like big TV and hot tub and jacuzzi and all of these material luxuries and status symbols that we end up acquiring. Once you acquire these, then you'll be happy. But what's really interesting is that it doesn't last very long at all. The duration in which you are trying to satisfy your desire for stuff is actually very long, and then your actual appreciation when you acquire that is relatively short, because you end up recognizing when you do end up acquiring that there's more things that you want. Again, it's like you're throwing more rags onto your desire. The fire just keeps going out of control. So let's just say that you ended up getting your house, your dream home that you've been waiting so long for, and you're finally there. And there is a certain period where you do experience happiness and contentment. But again, I think it's very fleeting, because what ends up happening? Well, I think I want to fill this room now with a nice couch. Maybe I'll get a dining set. Maybe I'll get some new dishes, and get a new TV, and get a new carpet, and all these other desires that end up springing up as a result of you acquiring that one desire. So again, you're really not even in a position to truly enjoy yourself whenever you're looking to the future, whenever you're looking for the horizon. You're never going to find any sort of lasting happiness. You will, of course, when you end up reaching a certain destination, in the same way that if you were on a long hike through the woods and you finally end up reaching this shelter, you get to take your backpack off. And it's true, your shoulders breathe a sigh of relief. I finally arrived. I feel good about my accomplishment. It does exist. You do experience a little flickering moment of happiness. But again, there's always that thing on the horizon. There's always that next step that you're always looking for. There's always that goal in the future that you're trying to reach. And it's really quite unfortunate because I think it's a very unhealthy habit to always make the product the most important part of the whole process in life. So it's the goal, it's not the process of getting there that becomes what's truly important. So for example, let's just say that you were trying to go and get to this house that you wanted so dearly because you thought once you acquired it, you'll be happy, you'll be content. And now you ended up, let's just say, getting a job or a career that you actually detest. The vast majority of your day is spent in agony or anxiety or boredom, and you really don't enjoy your experience at all. But you do so because, again, it's all for that end. This is just a means. Your job, making money, paying off your mortgage, all of these things, like, it's just to get to the point where you end up getting your house. But you don't realize that the vast majority of your time is spent doing things that you really just don't enjoy. And I think that the person who sacrifices too much enjoyment of life to serve some sort of purpose of the future, like wealth and security, political power, and all these different other things that are outside of yourself, are really making a mistake of overestimating the extent of how their future life is going to be compared to what it could be right now. You can have a fantastic life right now by changing your perception, changing the way that you end up viewing the idea of what happiness is. Maybe it's not acquiring things outside of yourself that ends up leading to any lasting happiness. So now we can go in the other way around. So why don't we start searching for happiness by looking inwardly? And I think that that is probably the more effective approach to discovering happiness. Because I think that a person can make themselves happy or miserable regardless of what's going on around them. You can have the person that has acquired everything materially that they've ever dreamed of. As I mentioned, the big house, the hot tub, the wonderful boat, the pieces of property, all these luxurious accommodations and status symbols and all of these things that really are the product of wealth. But the thing is that they can have all these different things and still be absolutely miserable. And most of them are because they just don't know what they want in life. They think they wanted stuff, but they really didn't in the end of it all. So what kind of things do we strive for that really end up making life enjoyable? And I think that's developing your strengths and realizing your innate potential and becoming what it is to be yourself, the true self, the best self that you can end up becoming. And I think that all of your goals in life, all of them have to sort of work harmoniously together to eventually end up acquiring this point. If your long-term goals are inconsistent with your short-term goals, the thing is that there's a certain disharmony that ends up occurring within life. Not all things are firing on all cylinders, so to speak. They're missing components, and that sense of fragmentation, that sense of investing energies towards one thing that isn't moving towards something else that you really want. The problem is that you're never going to be truly happy or content as a result of that. So your goals in life all have to be harmoniously working together. So the idea of getting a house or getting all these other material accommodations should go hand in hand with the idea of enjoying the process of getting there, of relishing your work. Because I think work and play are pretty much two sides of the same coin for those who end up really figuring out the game of society. If you can get paid to play, that is the mark of a very mature individual. And I think that's the only intelligent way to go about making money. Do what you flat out enjoy doing, and whatever material accommodations result from that, great. But you don't make the material accommodations your primary motivation. That's just crazy. Because again, it's just not a very lasting form of happiness there. And I think that all sort of forms of stress, all these different ways that we end up being frustrated and feeling that life is meaningless and everything is just difficult and it's just so many problems and problems and problems. I think that it's pretty much how you relate to your events and your situations. I know that I talked about the idea that we're basically in control of our emotions, that we can end up changing the way in which we evaluate situations to end up leading towards certain states of mind, like happiness and contentment. But it's a change in perception. It's a change in how you end up relating to your environment. And I really do think that that's the important factor for any long-term feeling of happiness. it's changing your perception. So the idea is that a lot of people have forgotten to be thankful for what they've got, and they've always been resentful for what they don't have. They're always searching. They're always looking for something. And I think that contentment, even in poverty, can bring happiness if your lens of perception is clear enough, where your search for happiness is so inwardly directed that you can be in a state of squalor and still rise to the highest chambers of happiness. And I think discontentment is poverty itself. You can be discontent even if you have substantial amount of material riches. But I do want to sort of point out as well too that certain material accommodations do make things easier to end up looking inwardly. Because again, it's pretty difficult to look inwardly if you're extremely hungry or out in the streets. So by acquiring certain material accommodations, you can end up making that inward path a little easier. But I think that if you end up having the primary way of searching for happiness to be inwardly directed, I think that you'll end up finding happiness relatively easily.